I never imagined that one night would change everything between me and my stepdad. It started as an ordinary evening, just me, my mum, and her husband David. We weren't particularly close, but we got along well enough. He had been in my life for a few years, always kind but distant, like he wasn't sure how much of a dad he was supposed to be. That night, a heavy storm rolled in, shaking the entire house. The wind howled through the windows, and the rain pounded against the roof. My mum, who had been feeling unwell for days, decided to sleep early, leaving just David and me awake in the living room. The storm knocked out the power, plunging the house into darkness. I was about to head to my room when David sighed, rubbing his temples. "You might want to stay in the living room tonight," he said. "Your room is right next to that old tree outside, and with winds like this—" He didn't finish his sentence, but I knew what he meant. That tree had always looked like it was one bad storm away from crashing down. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. After all, it was just for the night. David grabbed a few blankets and set up a makeshift sleeping spot on the couch, but as the night wore on, the temperature dropped. The house felt colder than ever, and the thin blanket I had wasn't helping. David, noticing me shivering, chuckled and patted the bed next to him. "Come on, we're both freezing, it's just for warmth." I hesitated again, but the cold was unbearable. I climbed in, careful to keep space between us. But as the night deepened, something happened. Something that neither of us expected. Something that would change how I saw him forever. As I lay there beside David, I couldn't shake the strange feeling creeping over me. It wasn't just the storm outside or the unfamiliarity of sharing a bed with him, it was something else. An unspoken tension hung in the air, making it impossible for me to relax. I turned slightly, glancing at him in the dim glow of the lightning flickering through the curtains. His face was calm, but there was something almost distant in his expression, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. I tried to focus on the sound of the rain, the steady rhythm of it against the roof, but my thoughts kept drifting. I had never really thought much about David before. He was just my mum's husband, the man who had stepped into our lives when I was 15. He had always been polite, respectful, never overstepping his role. But now, lying here next to him, I realized how little I actually knew about him. "Can't sleep?" he asked suddenly, his voice low and rough from exhaustion. I hesitated before answering. "Not really," he sighed. "Me neither." For a few minutes, we just lay there in silence, listening to the storm rage on. Then, out of nowhere, he let out a quiet chuckle. "This reminds me of when I was a kid," he said. "We had this tiny old house, and every time there was a storm, my dad used to make us all sleep in the living room together, said it was safer that way." I smiled faintly. "Sounds nice." It was, until he left. His tone shifted slightly, and I could tell there was more to the story. I wanted to ask, to understand, but something held me back. Maybe it was the way his voice trailed off, like he wasn't sure he wanted to share more. Or maybe it was because, deep down, I knew we were already crossing into unfamiliar territory, one that neither of us knew how to navigate. And then, just when I thought the night couldn't get any stranger, he turned to me and said something that sent a chill down my spine. I swallowed hard, my breath catching as David turned to face me. His expression was unreadable in the dim light, but his voice was steady. "You ever feel like you don't really belong anywhere?" he asked quietly. His words caught me off guard. I wasn't sure what I had been expecting, but it wasn't that. "What do you mean?" I asked hesitantly. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "I don't know, it's just, your mum loves me and I love her, but sometimes I wonder if I really fit in here." He let out a small, humorless laugh. "Like I'm just passing through someone else's life." I stared at him, suddenly seeing David in a way I never had before. He had always seemed put together, like the kind of man who never second-guessed himself. But now he sounded lost. I shifted under the blanket, unsure of what to say. "I think everyone feels that way sometimes," I finally murmured. He nodded slowly, but his eyes held something deeper, something unspoken. I felt the weight of it pressing between us, making the space in the bed feel impossibly small. Just then, the wind outside howled louder, shaking the windows. The power was still out, and for a split second, everything was swallowed by darkness. The only thing I could hear was the sound of our breathing. David exhaled sharply. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," he muttered. I hesitated before answering. "Maybe because I'm the only one awake to listen." He let out another quiet chuckle, but it didn't reach his eyes. The storm raged on outside, but the real storm, the one building in the silence between us, was something else entirely. And then, just when I thought we had reached the peak of discomfort, he said something that made my heart stop. "You remind me of someone I used to know." I turned to him, my pulse quickening. "Who?" David didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, lost in a memory I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. I could hear the storm outside, but it was nothing compared to the storm brewing in my own mind. David's words lingered in the air, thick with meaning. "You remind me of someone I used to know." I shifted slightly, my heart pounding. "Who?" I asked again, my voice quieter this time. David hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the blanket absent-mindedly. "Her name was Claire," he finally said, his voice distant. "She was important to me." I waited, sensing that there was more. The way he spoke, slow, deliberate, told me that whatever memory he was lost in wasn't a simple one. "We grew up together," he continued. "She was my best friend. The kind of person who could make you feel like the world wasn't so bad, even when everything was falling apart." There was something in his tone that sent a chill down my spine. "What happened to her?" I asked. David exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "She disappeared," he said flatly. "One night, just like this, she was there. And then she wasn't." A shiver crawled down my arms. "What do you mean, disappeared?" "She went missing. No one ever found out what happened to her." The words settled heavily between us, sending goosebumps across my skin. I wasn't sure what disturbed me more, the story itself or the way he was looking at me now, like I was a ghost from his past. For the first time that night, I became hyper-aware of the fact that I was lying next to him, alone in a dark house, with no one else awake. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but my focus was locked on him, on the way his breathing had changed, on the way his fingers gripped the blanket just a little too tightly. "David!" My voice was barely above a whisper. His gaze finally met mine, dark and unreadable. And then, in the dim light, he said something that made my blood run cold. I never stopped looking for her. A deep, unsettling chill ran through me. David's eyes, shadowed in the dim light, held something unreadable, something that made my pulse quicken. "I never stopped looking for her," he repeated, his voice eerily calm. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Was this just grief talking, a strange coincidence? Or was there something more, something I wasn't seeing? "Why are you telling me this?" I asked carefully. David exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Because," he said, his voice lower now, almost hesitant, "you remind me of Claire in ways I can't explain. The way you move, the way you talk, even the way you hesitate before you speak." He let out a quiet chuckle, but there was no humor in it. "It's like I'm seeing her all over again." A nervous energy crackled inside me. This was getting too strange, too intense. I sat up slightly, trying to create some distance between us, but the storm outside was still raging, and the room felt suffocatingly small. "That's just a coincidence," I murmured. "People remind each other of others all the time." David didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached over to his nightstand, opening the drawer slowly. My body tensed, every nerve on edge. Then he pulled out something small and placed it in my hand. A photograph. I hesitated before looking down, and when I did, my breath hitched. The girl in the photo, Claire, had my face, my exact face. I felt the blood drain from me as I stared at the image. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was like looking into a mirror. Same hair, same eyes, same faint scar above the eyebrow. "This doesn't make sense," I whispered. David studied me carefully. "I've spent years trying to find out what happened to her," he said, "and now I'm wondering if I already have." I looked up sharply, a new kind of fear creeping in. "What are you saying?" I breathed. He leaned in just slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. What if Claire never really disappeared? The room felt like it was closing in. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I stared at the photograph, my fingers trembling around its worn edges. "This isn't possible," I whispered, my throat tightening. "That's not me." David didn't blink. "Are you sure?" His question sent another wave of fear crashing over me. Of course I was sure, wasn't I? I had memories, childhood birthdays, school days, my mum tucking me in at night. But suddenly they felt distant, like scenes from a dream I wasn't certain I had actually lived. I shook my head, forcing myself to breathe. "Number, I know who I am." My voice was firm, but inside doubt crept in like a shadow. David leaned closer, his gaze searching mine. "Claire was taken," he said, his voice laced with something between pain and urgency. "No one ever found her, but I knew she was still out there. And now you're here. Same age, same scar, same everything." He exhaled shakily. "What if you were never meant to remember?" My stomach twisted. "That's insane." "Is it?" His voice was quiet, almost pleading. "Think about it. Have you ever felt out of place? Like something about your life didn't quite add up?" A flash of something surfaced in my mind. A memory, a dream, a hospital room, a woman's voice whispering my name. But the name wasn't mine. The air in the room grew thick, heavy with something neither of us could name. And then, the front door creaked. My head snapped up. Someone else was in the house. David's expression darkened instantly. "They found us," he muttered. Before I could react, the lights flickered back on, revealing the figure standing in the doorway. My mother. But her face wasn't filled with concern. It was filled with something else. Something terrifying. "You shouldn't have remembered," she said softly, her gaze locked on me. A cold dread settled deep in my bones. Because suddenly I wasn't sure if she was my mother at all. The room felt frozen in time. My so-called mother stood in the doorway, her expression eerily calm, but the weight of her words sent ice through my veins. "You shouldn't have remembered." I forced myself to stand, my legs shaky beneath me. "Who are you?" My voice was barely above a whisper. She sighed, tilting her head. "I raised you, didn't I? Does it really matter?" David stepped between us, his stance protective. "It matters," he said firmly. "Tell her the truth." She glanced at him, almost amused. "The truth?" she repeated. "Fine." Her gaze locked onto mine. "You were never supposed to exist as you are now. Claire was taken because she wasn't meant to remember where she came from. But someone changed that. Someone gave her a new life, a new name." She paused, her lips curling into something between a smirk and a frown. "And now that illusion is falling apart." My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. "So, what happens now?" She took a step closer, her voice softer now. "You can forget again. Walk away. Live your life as the girl you believe you are. Or you can chase the truth. But know this, some truths can't be undone." The air was thick with silence. My mind raced. If I walked away, I could pretend none of this happened. But deep down, I knew I'd never sleep peacefully again. I glanced at David. His expression was unreadable, but in his eyes, I saw something familiar, a silent promise. I turned back to the woman who had raised me. "I want the truth." Her smile faded. She nodded, as if she had been expecting that answer all along. "Then let's begin." The storm outside had calmed, but inside me, a new one was just beginning. What do you think? Did this ending surprise you? Let me know in the comments what kind of stories you'd love to hear next. 40.